Hello student, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Myself Dr. Baljinder Singh Gill, Assistant Professor, Department of Biotechnology, Punjab University, Chandigarh. And we will discuss about in this module various challenges for the cost effective and efficient nanoparticle biosynthesis or the synthesis of nanoparticle, the various challenges that is for the synthesis of nanoparticles which are cost effective and environmental acceptable nanoparticles under the that is paper that is a nanobiotechnology. So let us start with the chapter. So in this chapter the objective or the learning outcome after studying or after discussing this chapter, the student will understand the various, that is the main challenges for the researcher to develop a cost effective and environmental acceptable nanoparticle, and also the student will understand the contribution of this air as well as the water pollution with a special example of some selected industry, how which what type of emissions and what type of there is a possibility of exposure of that particular air pollutant to the living organism. So let us start with that chapter, that is the nanoparticle. There is the various challenges for developing a cost effective and environmental acceptable nanoparticles. So we have already discussed the problem of water pollution, air pollution, and we come to know that there is a lot of burden of this air pollution and water pollution. And this burden is more in the developing country like India. And also the various, that is a controlling body, government regulating body, they sets the, that is a parameter or the permissible limit of this water pollutant also, and also for the air pollutant also. So to meet that challenge also, and also the formation of, that is a, or the nanoparticle synthesis that are cost effective as well as environmental acceptable, it is a very big challenge. And in the, because they set the permissible limit, WHO, World Health Organization, they also set a permissible limit, for example for various heavy metals, and in various uh, various field, for example in the water pollutant, that is industrial effluent, they have their own permissible limit, and the canal or the river, they have their own permissible limit. And similarly air pollutant, residential area or the industrial area, they have their own permissible limit. They are actually set by this regulating body, and mainly the air clean act or the water clean act, they, that is of USA, they give the standard for air. For example, they give the standard, that is national ambient air quality standards. So to meet, because the burden of, it is a developing, India is a developing country, and burden of this air and water pollutant is, it is increasing day by day, and it is a very big challenge for the researcher to to develop a cost effective and environmental acceptable nanoparticle, means the nanoparticle which fulfill this permissible limit also, and also they are the cost effective also, and also they are not harmful to the living organism itself, does not pose a problem, that we have already discussed in the previous module also. Now the developing country, the main problem is also for dense population, they are increasing day by day. That is why they also pose a problem or create a challenge for the researcher under such a condition to develop a environmental acceptable and cost effective nanoparticle for the effective treatment of this pollutant or the water pollutant or maybe the air pollutant also. So because nanoparticle we have already discussed, they have various property and such they will try by how they will try it. And also in this chapter we will discuss about the various challenges in front of the researcher for development of these nanoparticles. So what are the possible challenges for the cost effective and environmental acceptable nanoparticles? Because how this challenge, where are the challenge? That is because we have already discussed that pollution, environmental pollution is one of the major problems, and the pollution of the environment is also one of the largest concern to the science and general public. Also, this slide show what are the selected industrial sector and their contribution to air as well as the water pollution, and to work the workplace hazards. Now these are the slides showing the metal, that is the base metal, iron ore mining, cement manufacturing, where the particulate matter, because particulate matter, air pollutant in the particulate matter we have already discussed, that is two type. One is that is a fine coarse particle, that is 2.5 particulate matter, then is particulate matter 10, that is a coarse particulate matter, then the suspended, that is a total suspended particulate matter also. They have the toxicity because these, for example, base metal and iron ore mining industry, they produce a particulate matter as well as the toxic metal sludge, which is a challenge for the researchers for their removal, effective removal. Similarly, in the slide there are the various industries and their emission, both air as well as the water, and their workplace. For example, in the first industry, that is the base metal and iron ore mining, the main problem air pollutant is particulate matter, and the water is a toxic metal sludge, and that is a workplace, that is a silica. Or similarly, another iron and steel melting, for example, that is a particulate matter sludge, and the plate that are the main where we have to work, that is the carbon monoxide and as well as the nickel. They are the main toxic compound which researchers want to remove. So these are the challenges for the researchers. This actually slide actually show only a few industries, and there are a lot of industries which produce the air, various air pollutant and water. And I have already mentioned that the US Air Clean Act as well as the Water Act, they have set a permissible limit for this air pollutant as well as the water pollutant. And similarly, India, they also follow the same criteria or the same standards that are used by the USA for the permissible limit of this air as well as the water pollutants. So this is a big challenge. The big challenge is that is for the researcher, that is a high level of pollutants. That is also a big challenge. This slide actually show what are the driving force or which type of action is needed. For example, if there is a which driving force lead to that particular action. For example, treatment action, it involved which is the driving force, that is the effects like mortality rate increases which required the treatment of that particular pollutant. Similarly, education awareness raising. This we will also discuss in the coming slide also, how the education awareness is required. That is also a big challenge to combat with the environmental pollution problem. So the exposure condition, like how much dose, absorbed dose, how much external exposure is required, these are required. These driving force, it actually required the education awareness. Similarly, the environmental improvement action, the driving force behind this environmental improvement is a natural hazard, resource availability, pollution level. Similarly, what are the driving force for the hazard management, that is a production, consumption, as well as the water waste release also. These are the driving force behind the hazard management also. Next, for example, if the action is a economy policy or the social policy or the clean technologies, then the driving force is the population growth as well as the economy development technology also. So this slide basically show the action, which type of action is required, and what are the cause of that action, or what are the driving force behind that action, that is explained in this slide. Air pollutant, we have already discussed in previous module, that is various air pollutant, like that is a compound of carbon, compound of sulfur, compound of nitrogen, and also that is a volatile organic compound, dioxin also. Now the second one is that is the main air pollutant is a particulate matter. So the particulate matter, they are of two type. One is fine particulate matter, that is a PM 2.5. 2.5, it is the size of that air particulate matter. Then PM10, that is a coarse particulate matter. The size of that particulate matter is 10 micrometer. Then there is a total suspended particle, that is a total suspended particle. So these are the main problem of air pollutant in the environment is, that is from the particulate matters mainly. And as we have already discussed in the module, that is in the air pollution, that is the India is a one of the country where particulate air matter polluted particulate air, that is particulate matter of air, that is most polluted particular matter in the air, that is out of first 10, 4 cities is from the India. Similarly, regarding the water pollutant, we have already discussed the various water pollutant in the previous module, and this water pollutant, they also cause a major problem to the, and also cause a health effect to the living organism. And this water pollutant, government also we will discuss in the coming slide, that government also, that is set a regulation for the water scarcity uh, in the country also. Now, as we have already mentioned that there are the various water pollutant, also the problem is major, that is a air pollutant also, particulate matter, and the air pollutant like compound of carbon, compound of nitrogen, NOx also, compound of carbon like carbon dioxide and SO2. And similarly in the water there is a pollutant like water pollutant, organic pollutant, pesticide, residues, etc. Now, actually, let us take a very simple example. For example, how we can recognize the water scarcity, because all in the different, because India is a developing country also, and different area have a different requirement of water. For example, there are some area where there is a water scarcity, and similarly some area is like where the polluted water is more as compared to the other. That is why this is this actually slides show the recognition of water scarcity, because government they have required regulation for the supply of water in the agriculture and also for the supply of household and industry, and it vary from area to area depending upon the availability of the water, which create the market opportunities also. So the water prices, it may rise or decrease, it will depend upon the availability of water. Let us take a very common example. For example, our elders, grandfather or the mother, they drink water from the same pond where the domestic animal they mainly drink water. But nowadays we can't drink water from the ponds, or even after ponds there is a groundwater. But nowadays groundwater, due to the anthropogenic activity, they are also, that is a contaminated. That is why now the water we mainly prefer to, that is a price water. We can say price water is water price. They are actually rising, which ultimately increase the capital expenditure also. So now regarding the fate and persistence of nanoparticle, it is also a big challenge, because still now the fate and the persistence of nanoparticle, it is not clear. Now it is also a big challenge to understand the mechanism of interaction of nanoparticle with certain biological process or the biological material. For example, in water, nanoparticle, the fate of the nanoparticle, it will depend upon the aqueous solubility plus the interaction with other biological molecule also. Similarly, in the air also, there is a fate of nanoparticle which is not clearly understood, and it is also a big challenge to understand the mechanism of interaction of this nanoparticle in the air also. Because due to the small size of this nanoparticle, they agglomerate or clump together to form large particle, which is normally settle down, and they also also create a problem. So there is also a big challenge to inhibit nanoparticle settlement to a larger particle of the same material, because due to the nano size, high reactivity, they clump together to form the larger particle, which create a problem. And it is also a big challenge to understand or to inhibit the nanoparticle settlement to a larger particle. Other challenge is also, that is due to their high surface ratio to mass ratio. It is not, as I have already mentioned, the clear mechanism for their fate in water and also the soil, because in the soil and water this nanoparticle mainly exist as a colloidal soul, but in the air they normally exist as a ultra fine particle also. Now the biological mechanism, for example their abiotic or the biotic degradation process, it is also still not understood clearly. So there is a challenge to understand the fate and persistence, because in the cited literature, to the best of my knowledge, there is no any clear mechanism for their fate and persistence of this nanoparticle in the environment. Now their product toxicity, because sometimes these nanoparticles, they react with untargeted, non-targeted molecule, and it is also a big problem, because their high reactivity, they react with the non-target molecule, and sometimes this non-target molecule, they are even more toxic than the reactant also, or than the pollutant also, which create another problem, or it is also a big challenge to inhibit such a reaction or such a interaction with the non-targeted molecule. So for example, when we are using in situ remediation, that is bioremediation of contaminant or the pollutant by using nanoparticle, in that case the reactive product, it might be more harmful or mobile than the parent compound. So, and it also can affect the effectiveness and the cost of the remediation also. So the cost and their effectiveness, because we have already studied that the effective pollutant remediation, it always required a cost effective as well as the cost effective plus most efficient method. So it is also a big challenge. For example, in this case, as showing in the slide, TCE, trichloroethylene, it under the reducing condition by non-iron, it may sequentially dechlorinate to DCE, that is dichloroethene, and might be the VC, that is a vinyl chloride also. but it is known in the literature that vinyl chloride, it is more harmful to the living organism than the TCE, that is the trichloroethylene. It is a very common example where the nanoparticle direct with the non-targeted molecule. So meaning this process would be undesirable. So it is also a big challenge to handle the nanoparticle or to inhibit their reaction with the non-targeted molecule. Next is the high reactivity of this nanoparticle. It is also a big challenge because, as we have already mentioned in the previous slide, this nanoparticle can react with the non-targeted compound. For example, bare nanoparticle, they tend also to clump together because small particle, due to small particle, they clump together and react rapidly with the soil and sediment and other material in the groundwater also. Similarly, there, for example, in the bioremediation application, this action inhibits the particle from dispersing in the contaminated area, because when the nanoparticle properly dispersed, uniformly dispersed, only then the bioremediation process can be proceed. So they are reducing their effectiveness for the remediation. Therefore, the coating or other treatment are done to inhibit the or to allow the dispersion of this nanoparticle, and so that these nanoparticle they reach a greater portion to the contaminated zone for the effective bioremediation method. Now the coating, for example, the coating of non-zero valent ion that is most commonly used in the bioremediation process, they include the that is the interaction with the, also include the surfactants, polyelectrolytes coating, emulsification layer and protective shells made from the silica or the carbon. Or so the coating or other treatment are required, which is also a cost effective, that is not a cost effective method because it required another treatment. So it is also a big challenge, that is a high reactivity of the nanoparticle. Now the big challenge is very big challenge, that is the design of nanoparticle for pollutant removal. This is a very basic slide, and it is also applicable to a general aspect also. For example, we graduating the people and they get the scientific knowledge, and the scientific knowledge, because actually our vision should be always clear. It is a big challenge for us. Our vision should be always clear because scientific knowledge students they get from the graduation level. That is, for example, our vision is to remove pollutant. That is, our challenge is to development or to design cost effective and environmental acceptable nanoparticles. For that we required a scientific knowledge. We will first, that is provided at the graduation level, we provide basic concept of nanotechnology, where the student generally study the physical environment and environmental pollutants, nanoparticles that are used for the removal of these pollutants. And this scientific knowledge, they are directly interrelated to the scientific tool. Now the scientific tool, they are mainly people or the student, they learn from the at the postgraduate level, where they learn the various instrumentation, wastewater treatment technologies, and the research methodology, and what are the control strategies for air pollutant as well as the water pollutant. These both are interrelated. So there is a requirement. It is a very big challenge because most of the students they gain scientific knowledge, but they do not have the scientific knowledge. That is the difference between also a technician and the scientist also. And India is a developing country, and they required a scientist, not the mainly the technician, because that is a big challenge to design a nanoparticle for the removal of pollutant. And when we go into the data, that is only country US, and among the Asian only the China 5% they have the patent in the or related to the nanoparticle. But India still they are lacking in the nanoparticle patenting. Now this scientific, if the student have scientific knowledge as well as the scientific tool, they have the application in the various field. For example, in this case, their application in the environmental application, that is for the removal of that is environmental acceptable and cost effective nanoparticle to combat with the environment pollutants. Now, this is for any contaminated site, how the scientists they design the nanoparticles. Now, the design of nanoparticle, first of all, they before designing nanoparticle, the researchers should design such a nanoparticle which will enhance the bioremediation process. For example, if they use bio-inspired or the natural or the biogenic source for the development of this nanoparticle, they can increase the bioremediation phenomena, increase the activity of this bioremediation. Now, if they design the nanoparticles for the removal of pollutant, then there is need of comparative analysis with the previous method. What are its drawbacks? They have to know. Now, these are the basic steps for the process development for any contaminated sites with the pollutant, for the pollutant, and process developed based on the design of nanoparticle which are environmental acceptable as well as cost effective. Now, if we have already designed the various nanoparticles for the industrial pollutant, now the problem is we have actually designed at a lab scale level, but the we require our requirement is at the large scale also, and we know there are various mathematically model. For example, if we design a nanoparticle in a column, for example, column study from where the wastewater passes through this column that is prepared by the nanoparticle or the nanomembrane, nanofiltration, then the lab scale parameter they vary at the large scale parameter. When the similar experiment we will carried out at the lab scale in the lab, and if the similar experiment were carried out at the large scale, then there is change in the parameter of this treatment. For therefore, the researcher they have designed a model. For example, they have designed a let us take a very common example of that, that is a column, that is we the phenomena is adsorption. In that case, Langmuir model is available, Yule Nelson model is available, Thomas model is available. These model actually they show the comparison between lab scale and large scale treatment of this particular nanoparticle design column. So then this slide actually basically show, because our need is to remediate the pollutant at the industrial level, because industry they have paid a lot of, because industry they face the cost, they have to pay a high cost for the treatment of wastewater, for the treatment of this wastewater, and they prefer any method which is a cost effective as well as environmental acceptable method. So researchers they are trying to develop such a method for the treatment of environmental pollutant. Now student, we will summarize the chapter, and we have already discussed the various challenges. The first challenge that of toxicity and also higher reactivity of this nanoparticle, it is also a big challenge. Then the fate and persistence of this nanoparticle, because it is not still clearly understood, this is also a challenge for this, for the student or for the researcher to develop a cost effective and that is a environmental acceptance nanoparticle. And there next is the main challenges is that we have already summarized in this chapter, that is the to design the nanoparticle, and this design it required a researcher, that is we have already summarized in this chapter, that is we want to undergraduate, we want scientific knowledge, we want scientific tool, because these two are interrelated, and scientific, this tool and this scientific knowledge, they interact with each other, and they produce a application in the various field like environmental, because we are discussing about the environmental pollutant. So also the, and that is another challenge is that, for example always available in the, that is always scientists say that 3R, that is a reduce, reuse and recycle of this nano or this nanoparticle. So they can, it is also a big challenge for the researcher. So overall in the chapter we have discussed about the various challenges, whether it may be at the reactivity level because of higher activity, that is due to the property of this nanoparticle, because surface charge, these are all are the another challenge is also because they can, because of their higher activity, they can react with the non-targeted molecule. So this is, these are some of the challenges, and the researcher or the developing country, they require uh, to overcome these challenges and produce a cost-effective and highly efficient nanoparticle or environmental acceptable nanoparticle. That's all about this chapter.